here just basically for Travis Scott, man.
Travis Scott, baby, woo!
I've been listening to Travis Scott since 3rd grade. You know, he's one of my favorite artists.
He definitely wants to see Travis Scott tonight.
We're all young here. Everybody wants to be here for the experience. This is Houston, Texas. We love being celebrated.
It's fun. I'm excited. I want to be in mosh pits. It's going to be fun. I like a lot of people.
It was crazy. Like, adrenaline started pumping.
I mean, like, this is a big event right now, you know what I'm saying? So, like, people are going to try and bust through the fence.
Hello, my name's Aiden, and God saved my life at Astroworld 2021. I wanted to be able to create some memories with my girlfriend who had never been to a concert.
It was my first festival ever. I've been to concerts, but on a big scale, it has been my first festival. I was just excited.
I was pretty excited. It was gonna be my first Astroworld with my roommate.
Astroworld was kind of like the first concert type place I've been to.
I've been to his past concerts, his past festivals. They're really intense.
I'm familiar with how festivals are done and stuff like that, but having one in my hometown at NRG Park was something I was really looking forward to.
He really supports Houston. I like that he's homegrown and he actually cares about the city a little bit.
But therefore I, Sylvester Turner, Mayor of the City of Houston, hereby proudly proclaim November 18, 2018 as Astroworld Day, Travis Scott Day in the City of Houston. Yes, sir, man!
A lot of people do love him because he loves Houston so much, and he based an album off Astroworld, which is in Houston. And
just being a Houston native, I think Astroworld, for many here, has a special place in their heart. I remember going there with my family. I still remember the rides. I still remember them by name. So Astroworld has a special place for so many people. To see it associated with the festival was very nice.
Astroworld, I think for generations has always been associated with memories. Whether it's an amusement park or a concert or the rodeo happening on that, that place is always associated with memories. I think the intention was to create something like that with an event like this, and that's why there was so much excitement about it.
It seemed fine. We got in through the gates. We saw the big stage, which was almost like a mountain.
We were just getting amped up. We were playing artists that we knew were going to be there, and we just remember looking around and being like, whoa, a lot of people. We just seeing basically a swarm of different people coming from all angles to get ready to go inside that show.
Kind of chaotic. We were standing in the line to get in to the gates, and from a distance, but kind of close, we kind of saw people trying to rush the gates as well.
Of course, you see a lot of people running throughout the sides of the roads, so they were the ones that were trying to jump in over the gates.
I knew this is going to be chaotic. These kids don't know how to act.
Keep in mind, this was at 11 in the morning.
And everybody just stormed in, and it was just crazy to see how they didn't care about nothing or no one or anything. They trampled over people. They took down the metal detectors. It was just total destruction.
There was cops with horses just lined up, ready, I guess, prepared for what was to come, because they know how these kids get.
This has happened before. I've 100% heard people breaking the gates down, jumping through and stuff like that. And it's something that I feel like, if you were prepped for it, maybe you would have had extra units out there. I mean, there was no reason I felt like for one horseback unit to be bouncing around trying to cover ground here and there.
It was very clear that by what was happening with the folks rushing in through the gates several times throughout that day, that HPD could really do nothing but try to minimize that as much as possible.
And it was early in the morning and they were already doing this. I mean, Travis didn't take stage probably till almost 11, 10 hours later.
I actually asked one of the HPD officers there if they had ever thought about canceling the event because of this issue with crowd control. He told me that they didn't have that capability, that was up to the people that put on the show.
I left there with a very bad feeling. You know, I told my reporter Barajas at the time, it just doesn't feel right. You know, there's too many red flags.
So whenever you walked in the gate, as soon as you walked straight, the merch line was on the side. And then if you kept walking straight, the first stage was on the left side. And then of course the food trucks and all of that kept going down. And then the main stage, which Travis Scott performed, was on the left side as well. So the first thing that we went to was the merch line.
And we were about to go next, and they were like, that's it. Like, no, we're not selling merch to y'all anymore today. Like, they literally had to stop the whole thing because people didn't know how to act.
People were already jumping, trying to get over and grab shirts, and I was told even registers from one of the officers.
The crowd actually got crazy hectic was when Don Toliver came.
Don Toliver.
And it was really, really bad.
I was thinking there wasn't a lot of security around.
There really was just that super heightened sense of chaos, and I really, really experienced it during that Don Toliver set.
That was probably the first sign that it was going to be a pretty upbeat, rowdy day.
That's off the bat, though.
That's off the bat. I think that was about 3 p.m.
And then after that, it was the main event, which was Travis Scott.
I went with my friends who wanted to be closer to Travis Scott.
So I did wait at the front of the rail. I was there sitting down for hours until 9 p.m. when he came out.
I was concerned for a lot of people because there was a lot of kids there. And these kids don't know what they're up against. They don't know what they're about to see or about to go through, because those concerts are very intense.
I remember there was two sides, left and right. There was a barricade in the middle, dividing them. People were throwing stuff at the other side, just yelling at them. There was a few fights, but that's normal from festivals. People are drunk and just doing stupid things.
You can kind of feel the intensity starting to build. He's got the big clock on the screen counting down, and the next thing you know, it hits 0. You just feel bass, and as a beat starts to build.
When things started getting out of hand, I mean, it was right away.
And everybody just starts jumping, they're going crazy.
I just got a boost of energy. It was a good experience for a few minutes.
Everybody's pushing to see Travis Scott.
Everyone just starts getting squeezed up a little bit, tighter.
My ribs are getting bruised.
Me and my friend fell to the ground.
I just felt like I had to escape.
I'm being crushed in the front, and there's no way I can breathe.
I kind of had to put my arms or my hands down because from stopping myself from hitting the barricade the whole time.
And then that's whenever I felt like I wanted to freak out, but I had my girlfriend there with me, and she's never been to a concert, so she's looking at me like, is this normal?
When that moment started to change, when I heard a bunch of people screaming, the screaming was pretty concerning.
And then I kind of gave in. I started screaming for help.
You couldn't move, it's like once you were up there, you had no choice but to wait till the concert was over to get out of there.
I was just trying to help people out, People were trampling on each other, stepping on each other.
If you wanted to get out, you were gonna have to really fight your way through.
At one point, when I really got serious was when this one girl screamed, somebody's gonna die.
As I mentioned, 90210 was the first time he actually stopped it. He was up on it was a rising platform. He got up there and he was singing, and eventually he said, hold on, you know, stop the show. Made sure the person was all right.
Somebody help him, somebody pass him. Somebody pass him right here. Hold on, don't touch him, don't touch him.
So he did stop the concert for probably 5 minutes, but he stopped and everybody turned around, and behind me was like a golf cart, kind of like with like ambulance lights on it, and it was just passing in the middle of the crowd, like, and everybody was just like, what's going on? I know I seen some people like say like move, like let them get through, but then I seen some kids like jumping on it, like messing with it or like taking it as a joke, you know, like they weren't really taking it seriously.
Stop, cool hands up, y'all 2 hands up. Y'all know what y'all can do, chase me, let's go.
I personally didn't find myself having trouble breathing, but there was a point in time where I fell down. It was very unorganized, it was very rowdy. It's a tough time, for sure.
There was people trying to figure out how we can get everyone to, you know, stop squeezing each other or get oxygen, and I felt like some of the people's ideas was to just get on a knee, and then that wave comes, and like those first people that went down, the wave comes and pushes me on my back. Yo, are you good? Yo! And it was like I don't know, I guess like a falling pit. And then I just remember just like trying to see if anyone would look to get out, to help me get out. And everyone was like doing their best to get out from the circle. But eventually everyone just fell on top of my body. Definitely right then and there, I was like, I'm gonna pass out or probably pass away. And so I accepted my death, and then like I learned in church, just to repent and pray to God. It was just like a miracle the way that I was able to get like cold air after that person was able to move off of my head.
Truly, who do you believe saved you at that moment?
God, for sure. God, there's no other explanation in my mind. Like, that was all God.
I love y'all so much. I can't thank y'all enough. I owe y'all forever. Everybody, I love y'all. Make it home safe. Good night!
The concert with Travis and Drake abruptly cut short.
We left the show, it was chaos again.
There was no signal here, and my phone was dead.
On the way out, you know, I saw a lot of lights, and I kind of peeked through looking, and I probably saw like 8 or 9 ambulances. You know, the street was filled with them.
I think we got home like at 12, and then my dad was like, look at the news, like somebody's dead.
Sorry. I was just in shock because I could not believe this happened.
You know, I woke up excited, and I immediately, when I found all that out, my heart sunk to my stomach.
None of us really realized anything had happened. until the next morning at like 6 or 7, I received a call from my older sister. So I was like, why is she calling me at 6 a.m.? She knows I'm going to a music festival. I'm thinking on the phone, okay, who died that she's calling me? Like, what emergency happened? So she picks up I answer the phone and her voice is super shaky and she's like, hello? And I'm really confused on why she's calling me. So I'm like, hello? And she was like, 7 people died last night. Are you okay?
Tragedy at the Travis Scott Astroworld Festival. At least 8 people we know were killed at last night's concert.
There was information out on social media before we got anything from the police, the fire department.
It was going to be my first day on air, just started. Got the call that, hey, something went down at Astroworld Festival. A number of people are dead. We don't know yet. We just need you to head there immediately.
Let's begin with our newest reporter, Rilwan Balagan, who is live at Energy Park with more details on what happened. Rilwan, what can you tell us?
Good morning. It's a tragic situation here. 8 people confirmed dead, 17.
Felt like it kept getting worse, you know, as we got the full scope of what was happening, what had happened. Hearing, you know, firsthand accounts of people who were just terrified.
Last night, you could see 3 and 4 ambulances leaving, 3 and 4 going in, and it was that way for a while.
So we kind of camped out there for the latest information. You know, we were getting details that were being rolled out then and there by city officials.
Last night was tragic on many different levels.
Around 7 or 8 o'clock, people started showing up to the festival grounds, really just trying to get the items they left behind. So for many of them, I was the first person who told them that people were killed here. I won't ever forget doing an interview with a young lady, told her that X amount of people, these people died, and the shock in her face.
When did you all understand or learn that this became fatal with 8 people dead?
I mean, didn't know 8 people died.
Immediately, she thought just a number of people were injured until I told her people were killed here, and her mood changed immediately.
Pray for these families. I think that that's very important. Everybody in our city pray for these families.
They started talking to us about the victims, the ages, and that's when it really hit you, when you started realizing that there was children in there as young as 9 years old who was there to see the concert with his father, and then ended up passing away in the hospital.
It could have been me, it could have been anyone that we were with, and it could have been someone that was close to us. How could that even happen?
It's just sad. It shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen.
Like a cloud is over Houston.
I just want to hug them and try to take their pain away, but, you know, can't.
There are about 200,000 words in the English language, and I don't think any of those 200,000 words comes close. They all feel hollow compared to the purity of Barkley's soul.
We're grieving, we're in pain. We want you guys to know our brother was the most amazing person ever.
Tonight, 22 buildings in Memorial City illuminated in pink in honor of Astroworld Festival victim Madison Dubinsky. The death toll from last week's Astroworld Festival has risen to 10.
We all can take away from young Ezra is that sometimes we just got to lean in. Lean into the to who's ever showing you love.
According to family, little Ezra was on his father's shoulder during the show, but was trampled along with his dad when his father collapsed due to the crowd surge.
No parent, no friend, no sibling should see their loved one off to a concert by a world-renowned artist and not be able to expect them to come home safely.
My son was there with 3 of his friends, and I'm just glad they had no idea how bad it was until they got home and saw the news coverage.
This is a very, very active investigation, and we'll probably be at it for quite some time.
We're working to figure out which entity can do that investigation because there's so many different players.
That situation is probably enough to initiate a criminal investigation to determine whether or not their deaths were something more than simple negligence.
So, my job as a chief of police is to make sure that we find out what happened. We will treat it as an investigation because we don't know.
We're talking to witnesses, we're talking to people from Live Nation, who was monitoring the crowd, what their responsibility, where were they positioned.
It's an unspeakable tragedy. I know that it's hard for people to move on from this without answers, so we're committed.
We're many, many months past this. I think we still don't have the answers as to who was in charge, really who's in charge, how the coordination was supposed to work.
You have a lot of people out there that have lost loved ones, 10. And then you have people that have been critically injured that are still recovering from the emotional and the mental stress on this. They want answers, and we're very limited in what we can tell the family, so they get frustrated. My name is Greg Freeman. I'm a retired captain with the Houston Police Department. I would not see any criminal negligence or criminal liability falling out on anyone on this. And I think right now, the powers that be on the city side and the others are closing ranks, and I do believe that they're doing that.
That there were these failures. It may cost someone their job. It may cost someone their career. And so there's this wall that goes up to protect those people. And it doesn't always work in the public's interest.
We also have to factor in the civil liability that is being looked at right now from many parties, not just the concert promoters, the city of Houston, the county. There are many players in this that are involved.
Attorney Tony Busby says he plans to file a lawsuit on behalf of 35 people, including the family of 21-year-old Axel Acosta, who died Friday night.
Civil rights attorney Ben Crump says he is filing a lawsuit today on behalf of more than 90 plaintiffs who attended Astroworld Festival a week ago today.
This was needless, was unnecessary, and could have easily been prevented.
The money that's involved that is going to be looked at, that's going to be how do you put a price on somebody's life that died from being crushed to death at a concert? I mean, if that was my child, what amount will make that better for me? There is no amount that you can give me.
We're trying to make things change in this type of events. Because today is me. I lost my son. It could be you, it could be you.
The Shahani family wants justice, have filed a lawsuit demanding it because they say what happened shouldn't have.
She was like an angel for us. Nobody should ever die from going to a concert. So this lawsuit is not just about getting justice for them, but it's about making sure that the promoters and the organizers know that you cannot allow this to ever happen in the future.
Travis Scott obviously is very closely tied to this city. And I'm certainly not saying that he's liable in any sense, but people are going to be looking at him to see whether or not there was any negligence on his part for what he was doing and why the concert wasn't stopped earlier.
You know, I think anyone that is the headliner, that is up on that stage, that brings people together, brings 50,000 people together, is going to be devastated when this happens. And you're going to feel like, was there anything I could have done different? And I'm sure he's asking himself those questions.
I mean, I'm honestly just devastated, and I could never imagine anything like this just happening. And I'm gonna do everything I can to keep you guys updated and just keep you guys informed on what's going on. I love you all.
So many people are pointing fingers at Travis and others without knowing really the facts.
What finger pointing and inconsistency are you referring to specifically?
Just a day after the mayor and the police chief, as I understand it, said that, you know what, if the plug had been pulled earlier on this show, there could have been rioting.
We have to worry about rioting
riots when you have a group that's young.
Just a day later, the police chief came out and said, you know, Travis Scott is the guy that should have pulled the plug, didn't pull the plug, he's at fault here.
The ultimate authority to end a show is with production and the entertainer, okay? And that should be through communication with public safety officials.
When Travis knew something was going on, he would stop and make sure that somebody was helped. But as far as knowing the magnitude, knowing that something was happening that could ultimately lead to the death of now 9 people, certainly he didn't know any of that.
I don't know if you can only blame one person for that amount of people getting hurt.
To me, I think the entertainers on the stage, they had the microphone.
I think the responsibility fell on the company that organizers that organized the concert.
City of Houston, they didn't do nothing. They were outside the gates, and they didn't come in until after.
It wasn't anything anyone expected. It didn't come from bad intention. It was just simply it was the worst case scenario planning wise. Every bad thing that could have happened to make that tragedy happened.
What I've just been trying to, get to the bottom of is just what happened here.
The best thing for him to do is shut up.
He comes across as empathetic and, there for the families in one breath, but then turns around and denies all responsibility and acts like he doesn't know anything about it.
The festival itself was done by Travis Scott. You had Live Nation. You had members of the City of Houston, the City of Houston itself. You had the county. You had those that helped put together the festival that were subcontractors, the security firms.
The million-dollar question is, who is in charge? Who has jurisdiction? Who's issuing the permits? Who has the oversight?
It depends on who you talk to, you get a different answer.
There hasn't been a definitive ruling because no one wants to take ownership on this.
And that's been a big fear of a lot of people who are involved in this industry and are watching this from the outside, that we'll have these 10 deaths. Most of the cases will settle, maybe some will go to trial, but then we'll get no resolution as to what changes may be made or what changes may be required or what changes were prompted because of this wave of lawsuits, because all the settlements are confidential, at least to this point.
What I heard, what he experienced, I was just in disbelief. Could not believe what had happened to him. I know my son, he shut down for a little while. He didn't want to go to school. He gave up. He had no desire. And I pray to God that it ends one day where he can be set free of it. Hi, I'm Victor Cruz.
I'm Diana Cruz.
We are Aiden Cruz's parents.
I don't want to say we were infuriated. We were upset, but anger is not going to help anyone at this point. It's about what do we do now? What do we do going forward? It's not going to help Aiden deal with this emotionally and mentally. So my stand is that we forgive those people that did this thing. We also want to help them accountable to do something good about it, to make some changes.
Because if it's not, it's just all these people died in vain. They didn't do nothing for it. It's somebody has to be held accountable.
When you go back to, okay, well, who should have done this, or who should,
everyone's pointing the finger
at everybody else.
Have any of the requisites changed for the city as a result of what took place with Astroworld for large events?
There's always room for improvement and tweaking. We're looking.
But have any changed since?
Changed significantly, I would say. No.
It is important to remember, Astroworld was not on city property. It was city public safety that had to step in at the last moment, but that is not city property, and that was not a, so again, it's.
But the city had a hand in coordinating that event, council member, and I think that's what a lot of people are inquiring about, that the city has a hand.
Again, this is about looking at all the different opportunities, and we have a bite at the apple here where we can focus on what the city can control, and that's making sure that there are enough eyes and a proper plan in place ahead of time so that it's not a strain on safety.
That's correct.
Why did it take the deaths of 10 people for the city and the county to realize it needed to do a better job of working together to ensure a higher level of safety at big events like this?
Well, look, tragedies regretfully sometimes, realize the necessity to review things. And that's why this initiative is all forward-looking. We can second-guess what happened in the past in some degree, but that's not what we need to pay attention to. We need to look forward.
We even went to the Texas Music Office, which spearheaded the governor's task force on concert safety, and even they really said it's a gray area.
So, yeah, 2021, this never should have happened. It should never happen again, period, full stop. My name is Brendan Anthony, and I'm the director of the Texas Music Office.
What do you do?
I run the office's support for the music industry as a whole.
The state needs to be involved to make sure that we do have some statewide protocols.
We learned that there are a large set of mass gathering best practices that must be followed.
When I interviewed the head of the music office, it was compiling a list of best practices, essentially saying that, look, there are already rules, regulations, laws on the books, and best practices on the books to make sure things like this don't happen. And so we have put together this exhaustive list, created this clearinghouse of all these documents and rules and regulations, and put it on our website.
And while this wasn't a mission to examine exactly what went wrong at Astroworld to hold people accountable, it was an investigation of sorts to identify what happened to make things not repeat itself in the future.
How can you ensure that these best practices are then followed through?
Well, that needs to come down to enforcement. And enforcement's not in my jurisdiction. So enforcement needs to come from the county judges and the people who work for them in law enforcement. And people who create mass gathering events and do not permit them should be dealt with legally.
There's a memorandum of understanding about how the county and the city will work together when you have a large-scale event at NRG, because technically that's a county property, but it's within the city limits. It's a massive event. Come to find out that that MOU, that memorandum of understanding, actually made it more confusing as to who was in charge of this, who was in charge of that. I guess you got to be careful, but I mean, who didn't answer questions that you had asked?
Well, we respected that a number of these parties were involved in lawsuits at this point. So we did not reach out to mayor's office or others that were involved in these lawsuits at this point.
You did not reach out?
No, our goal was to set aside these best practices for creating mass gathering permits in Texas.
But I mean, was the door slammed or was it a lawsuit? Was it the lawsuit or was it people intentionally not answering questions?
I'd rather not say.
Governor Abbott's task force report is a failure. Any way you look at it, long before the disaster struck, any crowd expert or person involved in crowds, responsible for crowds, knew there were storm clouds over that festival.
Paul Wertheimer has dedicated his life to studying mass gatherings and how to avoid exactly what happened at Astroworld. He was a public information officer for the city of Cincinnati when you had that god-awful incident involving The Who, and all those people were crushed to death outside the concert.
At that Who concert in 1979, the way it was described is you had all of these people outside the concert hall. Some people thought they heard the concert starting, so there was this panic that, oh God, we're missing everything, and so everybody starts crushing forward. By the time everything was sorted out, 11 people had died.
It was an absurd disaster, especially in 1979. It never had happened before. It was the worst concert tragedy in the United States history. And I was consumed by trying to hopefully have an opportunity to have some good come out of this disaster.
From that day forward, he has made it his mission in life to try and educate municipalities and the concert goer on how to attend these events and how to hold these events in a much safer fashion.
Yes, we need security training, great idea. Yes, we need a better risk assessment, great idea. Yes, we need legislation that addresses crowds at concert events and live entertainment events.
Okay.
What we need most is dealing with the crowd. Overcrowding is the original sin of live entertainment events. They gotta have it. It's fentanyl to the concert industry. They can't help themselves. It's where they make their money is on standing room environments.
I think what made this one particularly different is that it was in an open area. It wasn't in a stadium where you had assigned seats.
You're able to control your exit pathways. At the end of the day, it really provides a command and control for an event of this magnitude.
There has to be an incredibly diligent method of crowd control.
Who ultimately had the call to stop this show?
The only people citizens can depend on to protect them are the people they empower to protect them. That is public safety. Now, if the police had no power to be there, no reason, then what was the police chief doing there? What was the police chief doing there in his uniform? Was the police chief paid by the city that night? I say he was there and he had power, or he shouldn't have been in uniform.
He said he went to Travis and he asked Travis to please keep it respectful, try and keep it calm. In other words, not where he had at past concerts saying rush the stage.
Well, yeah, he said he was respectful. Why that? It's nice that you're pleasant, but you're dealing with 40,000 young people. You got to be firm. I've seen fire marshals and police officials say to promoters and artists, you do anything wrong to stir up this crowd in our city, you're going to be arrested after the show. You do anything wrong, promoter, we're going to shut it down. They don't need the promoter's permission. They can arrest the promoter. They can arrest the artist. All of them have that power. The police and fire, they can arrest anyone that doesn't obey their orders. They don't need to discuss it.
Then who ultimately is responsible for ensuring the safety of a crowd like this?
The people who take the pledge to protect the public. That's fire, police, building, and health
But what if
agencies.
the city says, and the county say, it's up to the promoter, the person putting on the event, to ensure that adequate safeguards are in place?
It is, but when they fail, who rescues the children?
If it's happening in the city of Houston, then the city of Houston, police, fire, special events, all need to be at the table at the very beginning, because in the end, we have to speak to it.
The Houston Fire Department, Houston firefighters, had no command and control on the inside of Astroworld.
There was a unified command post in the purple lot, which was all the non-HPD people.
It's about having a base camp, for lack of a better term. inside of the concert where you have all the key stakeholders, including first responders from that local jurisdiction, ready to roll and ready to shut things down if things go sideways.
That's kind of a big deal. The people who are supposed to come to your rescue when you get seriously hurt and race you to the hospital were not a major part of what was going on inside that park until everything went south.
It's not a good way to operate, because what we saw at Astroworld was a private company get overwhelmed, didn't have basic radio communication to the 911 responding agency, Houston Fire Department.
I mean, it is like 2 soup cans and a piece of string is how they're basically communicating after they've had supposedly days of preparation to make an emergency plan.
You can go out and hire as many people, many different types of people as possible, but if there's not a coordinated command and control, which is a process that firefighters use every day on calls, it's a recipe for chaos and confusion. In fact, that district chief took it upon himself to ask the private company if they could provide them with a radio in case something went wrong. Instead, he was given a list of cell phone numbers.
We're trying to call. I mean, there's no radio communicate. There's no direct radio communication between the EMTs, the private guys that are inside the fence, and HFD. They cannot talk to each other.
The lead law enforcement agency was HPD. So we do the walkthrough. That was Friday, Wednesday, or that was like day before, 2 days before. And that was the big walkthrough. And even then, yeah, you just knew that there was gonna be way too much going on. And there had been problems in the past.
We want to show you what it looked like when the festival opened its doors today. 3 people were taken to the hospital after getting trampled as they entered Astroworld.
So Mark Lantini is a former commander with the Houston Police Department. He had been at these type of events in the past. That night, he was brought in as an extra job officer. We met him at his home. He was outside, sitting by his garage. And we just walked up and said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about Astroworld. And a lot of times you expect someone to just say, not talking, and they just shut up, and they shut things down. He spoke to us at his home and made things very clear that there was a lot of problems that night. And he wanted to speak to us about those problems.
Well, ended my career, and it was a poorly planned disaster, obviously. We wouldn't be talking about it, but from the get-go, everybody knew it was going to be a bad deal. An internal affairs investigation was conducted, and they determined that my failure to act during the event somehow impacted the end result. And I was relieved of duty, and I just decided at that point I was just going to retire.
Lantini's role on that night was to be about 300 to 400 yards away from the stage.
We had a post set up in the purple lot, which is at the corner of McNee and Kirby.
He was focused more on those concert goers that had jumped over the fence or tried to sneak in, and corralling them and processing them. He was nowhere near the pit.
We had a couple 300 officers, on-duty units there, SRG, SWAT was out there. There was a lot of resources because everybody knew there was going to be problems. Not even the potential problems, we knew there were going to be problems.
According to Lantini, no officer wanted to work the festival, which is why they had to actually help bolster the pay rate to almost double to what they normally saw.
The department knew that there was going to be, or their potential was there for something bad to happen.
When you say the department knew, you mean the brass?
Yeah, everybody knew. Once the concert started for real, like the big acts, we started getting reports of people being pulled from the crowd, people being knocked over.
There was a few firefighters that were stationed about a mile outside the venue, and their task, if you will, was just to monitor 6 different radio frequencies.
A member of the Houston Fire Department early on provided me with this, which is essentially a minute-by-minute log of everything that appeared to be going wrong at Astroworld.
When I got that document and started going through it, I mean, my jaw dropped, because you just see it building and building. It goes from a problem here and there to just catastrophe. All of a sudden, I mean, the guy's handwriting changes. It looks like he's under duress, because I'm sure he's writing down frantically over 6 radio channels, bits and pieces of what he's hearing, what people need, trying to keep a log, trying to keep everything in order.
When I heard, does anybody know where the promoter is? Which told me that they were going to try to shut down the concert or do something to mitigate it. But they didn't know where that guy was, which seemed odd to me. And then I think at that point I know that there was no control. I just remember thinking, how do you lose the guy who's in charge of everything? We're so screwed. That's what kept going through my mind. We're so screwed. There's no good outcome of this right now. I didn't think anyone was gonna die.
18-year-old Aiden Cruz was with a group of 7 friends, all trampled on by the crowd. At that point, he says his only thought was to save the others in trouble.
So I'm looking around and I'm just thinking, who around me probably has the most authority in this situation? And I see the cameraman, and my first instinct was to think, well, I feel like they might have like some type of like communication, like cue. I went up the camera ladder and I was yelling at the guy. I was like, stop the show, stop the show. The first time I went up, the people were like yelling at me, like, what is he doing? Like, get off. What's he trying to do? I was honestly a little discouraged, because I knew that I'm about to be yelling this and I'm probably gonna look insane for a couple seconds, because, you know, that's very not normal at a concert. You know, who goes to a concert and asks for it to be stopped? And I knew that the people around me were gonna be like, what? Like, why is he doing that?
Two hands to this gun. Let's save him.
But they didn't know what was going on, what I had just witnessed. But even then, like, I was definitely freaking out enough for someone to just be like, what's going on with him? Like, there's gotta be something definitely deeper than this.
He was just trying to, you know, stop it so everybody could live to see another day.
Yeah, and I think Aiden mostly felt responsible for his friends and his girlfriend, you know. And so I think that was the first and foremost that was motivating him the most. But then I think it spilled over to just humanity, you know, the people that were there. They deserve to live. They deserve to walk away from this concert unharmed.
So I run into some friends that I actually went to high school with, and they see me and they're like, hey, Aiden, and they're all like, are you, like, you're good and everything? And I'm just like, they just see my face and they're like, what's wrong? And I just like, I break down and start crying. I'm like, I need to find Bree.
What was the thing that crushed you the most that happened to him?
He didn't feel like a hero because he didn't bring Bree home. She didn't come home, so he didn't feel worthy of that title. And even though he did the best that he could, he still carries regret and guilt. That's the worst thing, the aftermath.
Yeah, it's just, you know, out of respect for parents and everything, I honestly, now that I have this time to talk here, I want to apologize, because I don't know if I've ever said too much on her, and I pray for them too. Like, I pray for them to this day. And that was my girlfriend's best friend. I admired her being Michaela's friend, because she was honestly a really good friend. and you know, she was hyped up for the concert too. So it's something that I carry today. That's I'll leave it at that. But
Ezra was the 10th victim to die from his injuries.
He is the youngest of all 10 victims.
The 10th victim of the Travis Scott concert.
The families of those victims want answers.
I think what stood out the most for me is just how young everybody was that was there and that were affected by this. You think of people who are in their 20s, maybe even a bit younger, who want to go out with their friends, who are passionate about a performer, an artist, and they get to see that person live. And some of the images are unforgettable. I think the 2 young people who tried to climb the sound tower to get the concert to stop, I'll never forget that, you know, that they had the wherewithal, they had the bravery, they had the initiative to try to save people.
To this day, I have like these dreams where I just bargain and like fantasize about how I'd save her or like do something different every time. Cause even when people tell me like, you know, what I did was good, you know, I'm thankful for being here. I wish I would have done so many things differently, and like it's like something that I can never not think about whenever I think about that day.
I don't know what I feel, but I don't feel good because, you know, I didn't personally get hurt, but a lot of people did, and a lot of people lost their lives, and it was at a person's festival that I really enjoy as an artist, and, you know, the whole thing, you know, I just felt weird, felt off.
My mom called us the next day, and then she's crying on the phone, asking, where's your sister? Because of course she's seeing all the news. And just hearing her, are y'all okay? I could only imagine the other parents, how they felt.
I felt grateful that my son made it home, but then in a sense, you're kind of like, I'm happy that he's home, but I'm saddened to hear all this other stuff. And I don't know how truly I could handle him not coming home. I don't know what state I would have been, because I'd almost do anything for my son. So
I held him tightly, and I realized there was going to be a mom that wasn't going to be able to do that to their child. And then when I heard there were more deaths, I was panicked because I felt like I'd sent my son into hell.
This is an event where you have multiple deaths from a concert where it's supposed to bring joy. Families are supposed to come to this. I would say this is one of the most tragic events I've ever covered, because we're talking about Astroworld Festival, 50,000 people who wanted to see Travis Scott, and it ended with death and heartbreak and lots of questions.
A lot of them were confused as to how this could happen. You know, been to many a concert themselves, and nothing like this ever happened. Some of them had been to bigger concerts than this, and were just stunned that people ended up being killed at what's supposed to be, you know, fun event. And there were families there, you know, and I think there was a lot of confusion as to how this happened.
I didn't really think anybody would die. Yeah, it just didn't cross my mind. I didn't think it was going to get to that extent.
I've never seen nothing like this before. Never, ever.
Hurricanes, we've seen those before. We know what that's going to be. But this is something altogether different. To go to a concert and it being crushed to death. I mean, where does that happen? This was truly breaking news in a fashion we really had not ever experienced.
Really hard to just even like go through any of it. Like my videos and pictures and stuff, I didn't touch them. I didn't look back at it. And you know, you have a little bit of like, you know, I guess survivor's guilt in a way. It's like, you know, people lost their lives at the same thing you were at, and the whole thing just, you know, it just sits really weird. It makes you feel really, really weird about the whole thing.
You know, I wish, a part of me felt like I wish I could have done something.
I mean, you know you can't, but like it's just like it hurts a lot because we were there and we had no clue what was going on. I think that's what hit the most, and I think that's why my family was really, really scared because we had no idea like this was even happening.
10 people who just wanted to see their favorite artist, or maybe not even their favorite artist, but just wanted to go to an iconic Houston festival, didn't get to leave, and that's really sad.
I definitely get the nostalgia. You know, I grew up I'm from Louisiana, but we came here several times a summer to go to Astroworld. I have very fond memories of it. And so I understand the excitement of this throwback to this great theme park and something that is a treasure for this area. So I get that. And then I also get now the feeling of sadness thinking about how this is connected to that.
My heart goes out to those families. It is certainly heartbreaking, and it's one of those things that will stick with me for the rest of my life. Again, being from Houston, Astroworld holds a special place in my heart. But now, I think it's one of those things that as soon as the word Astroworld is brought up, you immediately associate it with the loss of life, young life, and just unspeakable tragedy.
Astroworld, at least that name has been somewhat sullied now. I mean, something called Astroworld is where 10 people died. I wouldn't be quick to name something Astroworld in the future after that happened.
I just feel like what would my life be like had it never happened, and what has been a cause and effect because of that day. Like I think about it and I try to analyze every single thing that has taken place because of that. And I try to think, is it good or is it bad? And it just left me with so many questions that I don't feel like a lot of young adults like me know how to answer, you know? So it's definitely impacted my life completely, you know, changed. I feel like I jumped on a whole different path ever since that day.